How you doing? My name is Lu Diaz. I'm a producer, mix engineer from Miami, Florida. Today I'm going to cover the kick and sub relationship and how it affects my mixes and so on. My mindset when it comes to mixing the low end compared to vocals, vocals are the center of the song. They generally, over every style of music, you're going to have the vocals going to be the center. It's going to be the attention. It's going to be what people want to connect with. But in hip hop, very close second is the bottom of the song. It needs to have an impact. It needs to have an aggressive feeling. Now, that doesn't mean every record's the same, but generally speaking, a good hip hop record, if that low end isn't hitting you right, it's gonna be a problem. So my mindset to it is very important. I put a lot of time into making sure that's working, and also that it doesn't ultimately interfere with the vocal. I'm gonna play the session for you guys to just get familiar with the way the song goes and the way it sounds right now.
Do you feel it, babe? You my rider, so come ride this wave. I swear you won't feel it, babe. You won't feel it, babe. You forgot about.
So that gives you a basic idea of the sonics that are there. I'm just looping the hook. That's the most intense part of the record. So the first time I ever heard an 808 in Miami coming out of the trunk of a car was a record named Give the DJ a Break by Dynamics 2. And boy, that changed my life. First time I heard that, I thought, bass is life. So now I'm going to move on to the sub. I'm going to jump around a little bit back and forth because, like I said, there's a lot of relationship between these two elements. And I'm going to show you pretty much how I got the sub to get those low frequencies in there. And normally I would use an R bass or something like that, but in this case I use Vitamin, and I'll show you why. Vitamin is a really cool plugin because it's almost everything mashed up into one. It's not an exciter, it's not an EQ, it's not a compressor, it's kind of all of it together. And if you notice here, I panned everything to the middle, right here, because you want sub-frequencies to come mono, right down the middle of the record. You never want to pan kicks, snares, you could, but in hip-hop, the strength is going to come from the middle, from the mono. So now if you notice, it almost seems like the sub is actually going down a little bit, but what's happening here is the tone. Now you got to remember, when you have an 808 you're dealing with, sometimes people think, oh, I just got to add a ton of sub. But the definition of that 808 is not going to come through a laptop. It's not going to come through a pair of maybe 5-inch speakers a lot of people have at home. So you got to be very mindful of frequencies that are much higher than where the sub sits in order to hear the tone, because we would all love to have $80,000 pair of speakers to listen to, but not everybody does. So although the low end is the sub and it matters very much, you have to pay a lot of attention to the upper frequencies on this sub. And this is what I do with Vitamin here. So now I'm going to show you real quick the blend of both. Now, if you solo each one of these, it'll give you a good idea of what you're affecting. And you see that? That's a very high frequency for the boom, but in this case, I want that to stick out. I want that grit to be out there. That doesn't mean you do it for every record. It's on this particular record, I wanted that grit to stick out. Right now, if you notice, my direct volume is all the way down. I was just showing you what I was affecting. And what's great about Vitamin is you're able to blend back in the original signal. And those two elements together, how I influence the sound with these three faders, and together with my original, gives me that thick 808 I needed. Now, to bring the sub frequencies even sweeter and nicer, I love the way the JJP Pultic sounds. So you can see that there's where I really added all that bottom on it. But the beginning of it, Vitamin gave me the elements, sort of shaped the sound first before I threw it through the JJP EQ to really finish it off and give it that smooth low end. So I'm going to go over the kick just the way it was put together with these EQs. A lot of people ask me sometimes, why are you using an EQ and then another EQ and then another EQ? And, each one of these things have a character to them. They color the sound even without doing anything. You throw them through a plugin, they'll change the way the sound sounds. After years of using this stuff, for me, I just love the way certain things sound. So the F6 here, for example, is the first plugin I'm using, and this is a dynamic EQ, which is basically a combination of compression and EQ put together. And in this case, I'm using it as an EQ, and all I'm doing is really just shelving out a little bit of the low end to give the sub less interference with the sub. Let the sub carry those frequencies and let this kick sort of be the punch. And if you notice, I bumped up maybe 7K, 6K. And that's just to get the attack out so that you got to keep in mind when the mix is on, the kick sometimes gets lost. The punch may be there, but it needs some top end so the ear can identify, oh, there's where the kick is. A lot of times, the mistakes people make is they think, I want more kick. And you just really want to hear it more. You don't want it louder and level because it throws everything off. It throws the whole relationship between the boom and the kick, when all you had to do is just maybe brighten it up and bring out the punch. So that's basically what I'm doing right here. It's very subtle, but it's just that frequency I'm building up at the top end, and you'll see why. The next plugin I went to is an SSL, and I love the E channel. It just sounds good to me, and I use this to also bring up more. So you can see on the top end here, I'm hitting it, and even down there, just to exaggerate that punch, the tap end or the skin a little bit more. So you can really start hearing it like bright. Now, they may sound crazy to you now, but in the mix, it'll sound right. That's what you got to keep in mind. And then lastly, I used the API. And again, I love the way this API sounds. It just sounds to me like the original. I love the crunch in it. And as you can see, I'm popping off another 5K there and even 500, just to give it a little bit more grit, a little bit more punch to it to stick out of the mix. I'll play it for you with it and without. Now the kick is super bright. There's common mistakes that people make a lot of times, and I think it's just the approach, because they assume that you can take one sound, like say the kick, and EQ it, process it, do whatever you do to it, and it sounds great to you. And then you could do individually the sub or the 808, and that'll sound great. And then you smash them together, and there's all kinds of problems. And that's probably the biggest rookie mistake people make, is that you have to think about it in relation to each other. At the end of the day, they work as one unit because they exist in the same sort of spectrum of the sound. Now what's happening is I'm sending this kick through a aux to the side chain of this F6 that is plugged into where the sub is. And the point of it is to carve out a space so that my kick sits in there correctly and they can gel together. And that's what we're trying to do here. So let me play them for you, and I'm going to bring in the sub slowly so you can hear it. So the objective here is to get as much bass as I can out of the sub and as much of the kick punch working together, and I can get as much volume into the mix of it. And by using the sidechain on the F6, it allows that sub to be compressed in that frequency I'm trying to push my kick into. And then let me play it to you real quick with the rest of the drums so you start getting a better idea of what's going on. That's the drum section. And I'm going to do something for you real quick. I'm going to bypass the plugins here so you can hear the difference before and after. This is without the plugins. So you can see the difference is huge once you start adding all these elements together. So this is the approach I took with this particular song. And like I said earlier, every song is different and every approach is going to be different, but hopefully you learned something from this song and how I approached it and got the low end to feel right. Take care.
Do you feel it, babe? Yeah. Imagine what I came to do, yeah. Going between your legs, you ride in our pocket instead. Let me coach your position. You know what you're missing. Go ahead, make your decision. You deep in it. I ain't playing. You like what it is, and I'm saying, baby, is you wrong?